Caring Review, print speaking to the blind, celebrating 40 years of audio newspaper production. Welcome to this week's edition of the Glasgow Times podcast, recorded at the Bishop Briggs Media Centre by our amazing volunteers. You can get in touch with us via Facebook, Twitter or Instagram using @QNReview. That is @ CUEANDREVIEW. You can also contact us directly by emailing information@QNReview.com. That is INFORMATION @CUEANDREVIEW.com, or by calling 0141 772 3976. That's 0141 772 3976.
Glasgow Times, 11th of June. News. Balloon release planned in Irvine for murdered teen Caden Moy. By Aidan Maxwell. A community tribute for murdered teenager Caden Moy is to be held in Irvine after strangers reached out to his grieving family to organise a balloon release in his memory. In a heartfelt Facebook post, Caden's dad, Paul, said the family were overwhelmed by the kindness being shown for Caden after being contacted by some lovely woman from Ayrshire who told him locals wanted to arrange the event. The tribute will take place at Irvine Boating Pond on Saturday, July the 11th, with people invited to get yourself down for Caden, wear something green and bring a green balloon for a show of support. Caden, 16, was fatally stabbed on Irvine Beach on May the 17th, 2025, during a confrontation between rival groups from East Kilbride. With the court hearing, he had stepped in as a peacemaker before being attacked. Knife man Cole Turley later admitted murder, while Jay Stewart and a 15-year-old boy were convicted of acting with him in the killing, after a harrowing trial which heard how the trio fled the packed beach, boasted about what they had done, and even created a sick rap mocking the dying schoolboy. By Aidan Maxwell. Read by Gordon Brown. The Glasgow Times, 11th of June. News. Expect arrest if involved in Scotland's disorder, senior officer warns. By Aidan Maxwell. Anyone who was involved in the violence or disorder in Scotland on Tuesday night should expect to see the police and get arrested, a senior officer has said. Demonstrations and protests were held in several locations across Scotland following a stabbing attack on Monday night in North Belfast. Sudanese man Hadi Aludid, 30, has appeared in court charged with the attack, with the 44-year-old victim, Stephen Ogilvie, said to have lost an eye as a result. Assistant Chief Constable Alan Waddell of Police Scotland spoke to media in Fife on Wednesday after three men, one aged 31 and the others aged 18, were arrested following unrest in Glasgow. He said the largest demonstration, which took place in Glasgow, involved approximately 250 people. Whilst the majority demonstrated peacefully, a group of approximately 40 people who joined this protest seemed intent on committing violence and disorder, Mr. Waddell said. During this disorder, we believe members of the public were attacked because of the colour of their skin, and officers were also attacked. 3 members of the public and 2 police officers were injured during the unrest. Mr. Waddell said there will absolutely be more arrests in the coming days. There's an inquiry team looking at the incidents from last night, he said. That will take a little bit of time to make sure we're capturing witness statements and CCTV. But if you were involved in violence or disorder last night, you should expect to see the police and get arrested. Mr. Waddell said police attended disruptive but peaceful demonstrations in Edinburgh, Falkirk, Perth, Ayr and Paisley, and no arrests were made. Police are not expecting to see more unrest on Wednesday evening, but Mr. Waddell said officers are ready to respond if necessary. He said, "We're not expecting trouble tonight, but I'll be very clear. We have a plan in place around increased visible resources, increased visible officers, and we're absolutely ready to respond should we start to see any protests or an increase in tensions. He said the Police Service of Northern Ireland have asked for support in the form of public order officers. Mr Wardle said, "We are reviewing our capacity to do that, but we will support them if we can." By Aidan Maxwell. Read by Gordon Brown. The Glasgow Times, 11th of June. News. Fatal inquiry begins into death of Glasgow mental health patient. By Aidan Maxwell. A court process has begun for a fatal accident inquiry into the death of a Glasgow woman who died after being admitted to a mental health ward. Sarah Aitken, 59, died on August the 15th, 2022 after being admitted to the Rutherford ward at Gartnavel Royal Hospital on June 21st, 2022 and was later found dead on a stairwell near Balmoral Street in Glasgow. The Crown Office and Procurator Fiscal Service has lodged a first notice for a discretionary fatal accident inquiry with a preliminary hearing due to take place at Glasgow Sheriff Court on July the 22nd, 2026. The purpose of a fatal accident inquiry includes establishing the cause of death and circumstances in which it occurred, as well as identifying any reasonable precautions which could be taken to minimise the risk of similar deaths in future. Unlike criminal proceedings, FAIs are inquisitorial in nature and are used to establish facts rather than to apportion blame. The inquiry will examine the circumstances of Sarah's death, including the adequacy of risk assessment, care planning and adherence to relevant policies by NHS Greater Glasgow and Clyde, and whether opportunities were missed to prevent her death. Andy Shanks of the Crown Office and Procurator Fiscal Service, Scotland's Death Investigation Authority, said, "The Lord Advocate considers that the tragic death of Sarah Aitken occurred in circumstances giving rise to serious public concern, and as such a discretionary fatal accident inquiry should be held. The lodging of first notice enables FAI proceedings to commence under the direction of the Sheriff. Sarah's family will continue to be kept informed of significant developments as court proceedings progress." By Aidan Maxwell. Read by Gordon Brown. The Glasgow Times, 11th of June. News. Glasgow City Council faces fresh cuts amid £1 billion funding gap. By Amy Miles. Glasgow is staring down the barrel of fresh cuts and rising bills. As a national watchdog warns, councils could face a near £1 billion funding gap and risk becoming financially unsustainable unless vital services are slashed or radically overhauled. The Accounts Commission has warned that Scottish local authorities face tough choices about frontline services as a result of a projected £975 million funding shortfall over the next 2 years. Councils across Scotland are looking at a £529 million gap in their day-to-day budgets for the coming year alone, equivalent to 3% of total spending. Derek Yule, a member of the Accounts Commission, said, "As things stand, councils will continue to face increasing financial pressures unless they stop, reduce or significantly redesign services. Savings options are limited and will have to increasingly focus on changes to services people rely on. That makes it essential that councils talk to their communities about the difficult decisions they are facing." The Commission's latest report warns that Scottish Government funding is not keeping pace with rising demand and costs, despite a 2% increase in core revenue funding this year. Much of that additional funding is already earmarked for existing commitments such as pay awards for teachers. Capital funding, which pays for infrastructure projects and house building, has fallen by 15%, forcing councils to rely more heavily on borrowing and increasing long-term financial risk. Despite these financial pressures, the Commission notes that councils remain committed to delivering additional investment in housing, with many having already declared a housing emergency. Every local authority in Scotland has raised council tax this year, with an average increase of 7.7% expected to generate an additional £248 million. Councils are also projecting a £1.2 billion in income from fees and charges, including those for leisure facilities and certain refuse services. In addition, they are planning to deliver £180 million in savings, around 1% of total revenue spending. However, the report warns that future savings will increasingly impact essential public services as options become more limited. Social care continues to be a particular pressure point, accounting for £4.3 billion, or nearly a quarter of council spending for the coming year. The Commission also warns that medium-term reductions in Scottish Government funding could make the financial position for councils even more challenging. Liam MacArthur, Scottish Liberal Democrat finance spokesperson, said the SNP have demanded councils do more with less, while an increasing proportion of spending decisions are dictated by ministers in Edinburgh. As a result, we have ended up with school strikes, bin strikes and a shortage of elderly care packages. The Scottish Government must act now to put local authority finances on a sustainable footing. Ricky Bell, resource spokesman for the Convention of Scottish Local Authorities, COSLA, said the Accounts Commission bulletin highlights the perilous position of council budgets, with over £500 million identified gap for 2026-27. Of notable concern, the critical financial pressures facing our health and social care partnerships and the real terms reductions in the capital settlement justify and strengthen support for the resourcing COSLA call for through our budget lobbying this year. Whilst councils are being forced into damaging cuts, we are also expediting service transformation, which must be recognised as we begin to consider our role and expectations in public service reform. We will continue to advocate for fair and flexible funding for our councils moving forward. The Scottish Government has been approached for comment. By Amy Miles, read by Gordon Brown. The Glasgow Times, 12th of June. News. Colstonwell Park Parish Church closes after 110 years amid anger. By Aidan Maxwell. A historic Bishopbriggs Church has held its final Sunday service after more than a century, sparking anger and sadness in the community. Colstonwell Park Parish Church, which opened in 1915 and is regarded as the most historic kirk in Springburn, closed its doors on June the 7th after 110 years of worship. The building, designed by prominent early 20th century Glasgow architect Henry E. Clifford, is one of three local churches, Tron St Mary's, Colstonwell Park and Springburn Parish, being amalgamated into a single congregation under the Church of Scotland's mission plan for the city. Announcing the final service, MSP Paul Sweeney said, "The last Sunday service at Colstonwell Park Parish Church after 110 years. The Church of Scotland's decision to close Colstonwell Park is deeply disappointing. It is the most historic kirk in Springburn, designed by Henry E. Clifford, one of Glasgow's most prominent early 20th century architects. The parish has served the community well, with 1,100 baptisms recorded through its history. I went to nursery in the church hall. I will continue to work with the parish elders and congregation to save the building and give it a dignified new use." Congregation members have previously told of feeling bullied into a corner over the closure, claiming the three churches really haven't had any or much input into the merger, and that Colstonwell Park felt doomed from the start once it was earmarked to shut. Under the agreed plan, the United Congregation will worship at Springburn Parish Church, whilst Tron St Mary's will be retained for community projects and outreach, and the Colston Well Park building is expected to be disposed of at a later stage. By Aidan Maxwell. Read by Gordon Brown. The Glasgow Times, 12th of June. News. Drumchapel Citizens Advice Bureau fined £45,000 over illegal workers. By Gillian McPherson. A Citizens Advice Bureau has been fined £45,000 for having illegal workers. Drumchapel CAB is one of 3 Glasgow employers named on the Home Office's latest list of those who have been penalised for employing people with no right to work in the UK. The charity, which provides free, impartial and confidential advice and information, is based on Dumfries Road. Once the issue came to light, manager Laurel McMahon insisted that the organisation acted promptly and has since taken steps to strengthen its procedures. She added, "We take our legal responsibilities seriously. While there were aspects of the process that did not meet the required standards set by the Home Office, this was not intentional. We now remain focused on supporting our community and the thousands of people that we've helped over the past 60 years. The latest Home Office report, which is published on a quarterly basis, lists the fines, civil penalties, for illegal working given to employers in the UK between October the 1st and December the 31st, 2025. Other Glasgow employers in the latest list include Park Road Tapas Limited, who were named as the liable party and given a £90,000 fine after illegal workers were encountered at Malaga Tapas West End on Park Road. SM Services Glasgow Limited, meanwhile, was handed a £40,000 penalty after being named as the liable party when Kingston Car Spa Car Wash on West Street in Kinning Park was found to be employing people with no right to work in the UK. The Home Office states that offenders can be sent to prison for 5 years or handed an unlimited fine if they are found guilty of employing someone who they knew or had reasonable cause to believe did not have the right to work in the UK. This includes having reason to believe that a person did not have permission to enter or stay in the UK, their permission had expired, they were not allowed to do certain types of work, and their papers were incorrect or false. Fines can go up to £60,000 per worker. By Gillian McPherson. Read by Gordon Brown. The Glasgow Times, 12th of June. News. Tony Macaroni finally set to open in Cumbernauld this autumn. By Aidan Maxwell. A long-awaited Italian restaurant is finally set to open in Cumbernauld, with bosses now targeting an autumn launch. Councillor Adam Smith says he has been inundated with questions about when Tony Macaroni will begin trading at the site, beside the drive-through Costa Coffee, which form part of a £2.5 million development in the town. The unit, operated by the Viva Italia Group, which also runs Mosa, Nardini and Bar 1821, has stood empty since Costa opened in January 2022, despite signs going up to say the restaurant was coming soon and recruiting staff. A previous update indicated the Cumbernauld branch was expected to create more than 40 local jobs once it opened. Providing the latest progress report, Councillor Smith said, "As one of the most frequent questions I am asked is if or when Tony Macaroni might be opening in Cumbernauld. I contacted the company recently and asked them what their plans were. They have confirmed they are still planning to open it in Cumbernauld, and the Tony Macaroni restaurant is expected to open in mid-October. I will share further information as works progress and Tony Macaroni prepares to open." By Aidan Maxwell. Read by Gordon Brown.
Glasgow Times News on Monday the 15th of June. Calls to finally reopen a long-shut Commonwealth Games legacy hub. An exclusive front-page article written by Stuart Patterson. A final piece of the legacy of the last Commonwealth Games is still missing in the East End of Glasgow, leading to a councillor calling for it to be resolved. Last year, the Glasgow Times highlighted 3 issues in the community that were awaiting action after years of delay. We focused on the final housing regeneration site, land earmarked for a supermarket, and the Legacy Hub community facility, which was opened in 2015 but is currently closed. All were promised as part of the legacy of the 2014 Commonwealth Games, and local residents were frustrated at the lack of progress more than a decade later. Following the article, Lidl is now on site after planning delays were sorted and work has started on the housing site. George Redmond, the Labour councillor for the area, said that the Glasgow Times' interest and involvement played a role in pushing authorities to act. He said that people are now waiting for the Legacy Hub to be reopened. Councillor Redmond said, "Essentially, this needs to be the heart of the community. We've got some of the best houses in the UK. We'll get a supermarket which will be open within a matter of months. We've got the work starting on site for the last of the new houses. But essentially, the community needs to come together, and we need to come together to look at what the next step for Dilmarnock is." Councillor Redmond said that the hub can be a base for activities for the children, for training for young people and adults, and for looking at action on the health challenges that many people in the community face. He said, "It's one of the best community facilities in Scotland, but it's no good to the community if it's lying closed. The fundamental problem here is that the council have identified someone to come in and run the centre. So why is it taking so long? We already knew who the individual was 3 or 4 years ago. Why is it taking so long to get the negotiations agreed and actually get the person in there so that the community of Dilmarnock can come in and use this in the way that it was designed?" The Glasgow Times understands from the council that the missives for someone taking over the hub are concluded, but that a date of entry is reliant on appropriate licences being obtained. An exclusive front-page article written by Stuart Patterson. Glasgow Times News on Monday the 15th of June. A councillor admits that the number of Glasgow teachers from ethnic minorities is far too low. An article written by Sarah Hilly. The number of Glasgow teachers from ethnic minorities is far too low, a meeting heard. It comes as the number of school pupils from ethnic minorities hits a massive figure of 1 in 3 young people, according to the city's education boss. The city's education committee was told that there's a struggle to recruit teachers from ethnic minority backgrounds, but other areas, including medicine, manage to attract people. Figures show that 66% of Glasgow teaching staff are white, while only 3.6% identify as ethnic minorities. A total of 31% did not disclose their ethnicity. Councillor Stephen Curran from Labour said, "We're still struggling to have a workforce which looks like the city, and particularly the young people in our establishments. The number of staff who report as being from an ethnic minority is still far too low for what we have as an aspiration for the city." The Education Director, John McGee, said, "We have 1 in 3 young people now in our schools who are from the Black, Asian and minority ethnic community. That's a massive figure now that we haven't had in the past. I suspect we'll hit a tipping point where we'll start to see young people coming through into teaching." Pointing out that other sectors, including medicine, are able to recruit people, he said, "We attract many young people from our ethnic minorities into other areas. For some reason, we haven't been able to get them into teaching to the same degree." Describing the profession as phenomenal, he added, "Historically, 30 years ago, teaching didn't have the pay that it has now. It's a very well-paid profession. In Scotland, teachers are much better paid than they are elsewhere in the UK. I think we have to continue to show young people in our service how good that is." He told last week's Education, Skills and Early Years City Policy Committee that he feared that national debate around behaviour in school could put people off choosing the career. He said that a lot of talk in the press about schools going downhill is not true. Mr McGee added, "I concur that there is a lot of work to be done to get our teaching workforce looking better than it currently is in relation to our makeup of society." The issue was discussed as the committee was presented with the Education Department's annual business plan. It said, over a quarter of pupils in the city speak English as an additional language, and there are 175 different languages spoken by pupils in Glasgow schools. An article from the Glasgow Times, written by Sarah Hilly. Glasgow Times News on Monday the 15th of June. Glasgow airport strikes are off as workers secure a new pay deal. An article written by Amy Miles. Hundreds of frontline Glasgow airport staff have won inflation-busting pay rises amid threats of summer strike chaos. Nearly 400 employees at the airport, represented by Unite and working for ICTS and Menzies Aviation, have accepted improved pay offers after previously rejecting what the union called unacceptable proposals and backing industrial action. Sharon Graham, the General Secretary of Unite, said, "Hundreds of frontline workers at Glasgow Airport have secured vastly improved pay deals. This is a direct result of the workers refusing to accept their employers' pitiful pay offers and to fight for better pay, which they successfully secured after the threat of strike action." The workers had previously voted in favour of industrial action. Around 230 ICTS workers who process passengers in security search areas at the airport have agreed a 2-year pay deal. Under the terms, they will receive a 5% increase in basic pay and shift allowances, backdated to the 1st of January, along with a one-off bank holiday. In 2027, pay will rise by the Retail Price Index rate of inflation plus 1%, with further improvements to terms and conditions from the 1st of January. A separate dispute involving approximately 160 Menzies Aviation employees has also been resolved. These staff, including dispatchers, allocators, airside agents and controllers, will receive a 4.4% rise backdated to January, followed by a minimum 5% increase from the 1st of July, with some employees receiving up to 11.1%. The Menzies deal is for 1 year. Carrie Donoghue, an industrial officer at Unite, said, "Unite is pleased to have delivered 2 pay deals covering Menzies Aviation and ICTS workers based at Glasgow Airport. The resolution of these disputes removes the threat of strike action at the airport and ensures that no disruption happens during the extremely busy summer period." We previously reported that nearly 700 airport workers at Glasgow and Edinburgh, including those employed by Edinburgh Airport Limited, have also supported industrial action over pay. Ms Graham previously said, "Workers across Scotland's largest airports have overwhelmingly backed a summer strike. This is a direct result of their very profitable employers' refusal to make a fair pay offer. The workers have no other option, and the blame for this situation lies entirely with wealthy companies choosing to boost profits before people." In Glasgow, 170 ICTS workers and 150 Menzies Aviation staff were prepared to strike. An article from the Glasgow Times, written by Amy Miles. Glasgow Times, on Monday the 15th of June. Lifestyle. Glasgow's Provan Hall to host Parafest 2026 this September. An exclusive article written by Morgan Carmichael. A 15th century landmark in the East End of Glasgow has turned staff members from sceptics to believers after several spooky sightings. Provan Hall in Easterhouse has long been considered haunted by locals, as well as ghost hunting groups who've hailed it as one of the most active sites for paranormal activity in the country. Christine Pont, the manager of Provan Hall, is no stranger to seeing some out-of-the-ordinary activity. "Most of the staff are believers now because a lot of weird things have happened," she said. "One day, when the hall was closed to the public, I was in the dining room of the hunting lodge and I could hear children's laughter. It sounded as if children were running around the table in the room. It was such a crazy experience and I can't rationally explain it. Especially because the hall is so isolated. It's surrounded by land, so it wasn't like there was anyone around. A trustee was with me who's in his 60s. He's very sceptical, but he also heard the children. Ghost enthusiasts from all over the world have come to check out the hall, Christine said, and many paranormal investigators have requested a visit. Every school pupil that visits us asks if the hall is haunted. Given the interest, the hall launched ghost tours in 2023, which are usually fully booked and incredibly successful. The team then decided that it was time to explore the sightings of staff as well as the concept of the paranormal by hosting a festival this September. Parafest will take place on Saturday the 5th of September and feature appearances from author and Uncanny podcast contributor Evelyn Hollow, as well as Wayne Gilbert, the presenter of the Eerie Edinburgh podcast. The festival is free to enter and will see a ghost tour in the evening, as well as a series of workshops throughout the day. The staff will also be retelling some of their haunting encounters, while Paranormal Scotland Limited will be doing a talk. Meanwhile, attendees will be able to get their hands on free food, as Provan Hall has partnered with Wagamama for the event. There will also be stalls for people to browse through. Attendees will be able to wander around the hall for free and only need to pay for ticketed events. Ticket prices vary, but they start from around £15. Christine said that Provan Hall hopes to run the festival on an annual basis. Meanwhile, the hall will also be running a host of other events over the summer, including a Renaissance Day, a craft fair and a botanical lino printing workshop. To find out more about Provan Hall, including the events on offer, visit their website at www.provanhall.org/what's on. That's www.provanhall.org/what's on. An exclusive article from the Glasgow Times, written by Morgan Carmichael. Glasgow Times News on Monday the 15th of June. Campaigners fight plans to close the Queen's Park glasshouse. An article written by Ava White. Campaigners descended on a Glasgow park to fight back against the permanent closure of a much-loved Victorian attraction. Crowds gathered in Queen's Park on Saturday, pleading with Glasgow City Council not to close its glasshouse and gardens in August. The peaceful demonstration was held after the local authority confirmed its plans to close the facility as it attempts to plug a near £50 million hole in its budget. The council stated that its operational costs at the glasshouse had been deemed as unsustainable, but that it would work with heritage groups to try and secure the B-listed building's future with a new tenant. Locals are now urging the council to pause the closure, as they fear that the building won't reopen. Jim Monaghan, one of the event's organisers, explained that the immediate goal of the campaign is to keep the glasshouse open whilst the council searches for a leaseholder. He said, "What we're looking for right now is to stop the closure in August. There are some talks about various plans for the future and what the council might do, but in the short term we're urgently calling for it to stay open. There are two reasons for that. One is that we're in the middle of summer and people are constantly using this place. Secondly, we're asking for an equality impact assessment to be carried out, and the council hasn't done that. That would look at the impact that would be caused by closing the building, especially the toilet facilities. How would that affect disabled people, parents with young children and elderly people? The council will say that they can't afford to keep this place running, but they can't actually afford to close it. This is a crucial asset in our community. These things never reopen, they just lie empty. Langside halls have been sitting there empty for years now. There was no consultation with the community, we found out through a post on Facebook. Activities for youngsters and walks through Queen's Park were arranged as part of Saturday's demonstration. This was to showcase all that the green space has to offer and to make the event as family-friendly and uplifting as possible. The Glasshouse has been a landmark attraction in the city's south side since its construction in 1895. In recent years, it was home to a vast variety of subtropical plants, a fish pond, reptiles, insects, birds, and a children's soft play area. Scotland's Rural College had also been hosting classes within the 19th century structure until they were withdrawn in February. Glasgow City Council previously confirmed that it was in talks with the Scotland's Rural College to arrange a new location for classes to be held within its estate. Additionally, almost all animals kept in the glasshouse have been rehomed, and the council is in the process of finding a new home for the koi carp. Jim highlighted that the building's history was another important reason to keep it open to the public. He added, "It's just one less place for us to go. That's what we've seen over recent years, the constant closure of facilities in so many communities. When these things go, it's very difficult to get them back, so we're fighting back with this urgent campaign." Councillor Soria Siddique said, "Today's turnout speaks volumes. People from across the community came together to stand up for the future of the Queen's Park Glasshouse. Hearing stories from different generations about its history, significance and impact was both inspiring and moving. I'll continue to raise the community's concerns with Glasgow City Council and advocate for the preservation of this important local landmark. It's paramount that Queen's Park Glasshouse is saved for future generations." A Glasgow City Council spokesperson said, "Following the budget agreed by the Council in February of 2023 that required us to make over £49 million worth of savings, we can confirm that we're moving towards the closure of Queen's Park Glasshouse in August this year. Operating costs for the services delivered by the Council at the Glasshouse have been found to be unsustainable. Our staff at the Queen's Park Glasshouse have been advised of the situation, and we're working with them to ensure that all colleagues are redeployed to other parts of the park service. We had hoped that the Scottish Rural College would extend their use of the Glasshouse, but we're now in discussions with the college about alternative options within the Council's parks estate. We'll continue to work on identifying a suitable, sustainable use for the Glasshouse, and we're working with Glasgow Building Preservation Trust on how best to maintain the building for a future tenant. Almost all animals previously kept at the Glasshouse have been appropriately rehomed, and we're currently working on a suitable home for the remaining koi carp." An article from the Glasgow Times, written by Ava White. Glasgow Times News on Monday the 15th of June. North Lanarkshire approves a major new programme to improve council services. An article written by Beth Oliver. North Lanarkshire Council is pressing ahead with a new phase of long-term plans to improve services. The Council's latest proposals aim to support families and strengthen communities through 6 new strategic projects focused on health, education, housing and digital services. It builds on progress made under the Plan for North Lanarkshire and seeks to create a fairer, more modern and more resilient future for residents across the region. Councillor Jim Logue, the leader of North Lanarkshire Council, said, "The new approach will place a stronger focus on prevention and early support, helping people before problems become more serious. This will improve health and well-being whilst making services more effective and sustainable in the long term." Among the key proposals is a family support hub for children and young people with additional support needs. Other priorities include a refreshed education curriculum focused on job-ready skills, expanded mid-market rental housing for working households, and enhanced digital connectivity to enable more targeted, data-driven services. The updated mid-market housing model aims to help those who do not qualify for social housing but are unable to afford rising private rents. A data-first approach using artificial intelligence is also planned to improve the delivery of council services. Councillor Logue said, "The programme is not a reset, but the next step in a long-term transformation designed to strengthen communities, support economic growth and improve outcomes for residents across North Lanarkshire. It provides a clear way forward and builds on progress to date, sustaining momentum in a challenging environment." The plan forms part of a broader review of the Council's ongoing programme of work, which began in 2019. The review found that 68% of key health and well-being indicators in the area have improved, and around 40% of the current plan has already been completed. The new phase will focus on modernising services, building stronger communities and providing lasting support to residents. Councillor Logue said that despite increasing financial pressures, the council remains committed to delivering meaningful change. The proposals were approved at the Council's Policy and Strategy Committee last week and will be put into effect through a phased programme of service redesign running until 2028. An article from the Glasgow Times, written by Beth Oliver. Glasgow Times News on Monday the 15th of June. Over 6,000 every delivery drivers could strike after rejecting a pay deal. An article written by Amy Miles. Thousands of every couriers who deliver parcels across Glasgow have rejected a long-awaited pay deal by an overwhelming majority, paving the way for possible industrial action. More than 6,000 drivers voted on the offer, with nearly 97% turning it down. The proposal, which dates back to 2025, was the first ever to be formally recommended for rejection by the GMB union. Nicola Savage, GMB's national officer, said, "This overwhelming majority sends a clear, united and decisive message. Every couriers do a gruelling job, delivering millions of packages across the UK in a timely fashion, often getting nothing but abuse for their hard work. It's no wonder that they're demanding a decent pay rise. This pay offer is a year late and is well below what they feel that they deserve. Today's result is not the end of the journey, it's a powerful step forward. The GMB will now meet with every members to discuss next steps, which could involve industrial action." And every spokesperson said, "We consider this pay deal to be a fair and competitive package that reflects the vital role that our community couriers play in our business. The offer was developed following discussions with the GMB union and represents a significant multi-million-pound investment from every in pay and benefits. We're disappointed that the ballot was delayed beyond our control and that GMB Every Plus members were not given the opportunity to fully understand the details of the offer. Following constructive negotiations, we're surprised by the decision by the GMB to recommend a no vote. We're continuing to engage with the GMB to better understand their position and to move discussions forward constructively." An article from the Glasgow Times, written by Amy Miles. Glasgow Times News on Monday the 15th of June. Youngsters are invited to audition for Glasgow's Pavilion Theatre pantomime. An article written by Beth Oliver. Young performers are invited to step into the spotlight in this year's Pavilion Theatre pantomime. The Glasgow Theatre has announced open auditions for its junior ensemble cast in this year's pantomime, Goldilocks and the Three Bonny Bears, offering children across Glasgow the opportunity to take part in its festive tradition. Jamie Gordon, the theatre director, said, "This is such an exciting opportunity for the next generation of stars in Glasgow to be part of something truly magical. Every festive season we welcome more than 85,000 excited theatregoers through our doors, and for local youngsters this is a rare chance to perform in front of huge audiences while sharing the stage with Glasgow favourites like Liam Dolan, Grado, Stephen Purden and our newest PAV Panto joiner, Louise McCarthy. As well as being part of a professional production, our junior ensemble members gain confidence, make new friends, learn from an experienced company and create memories that they'll never forget. We can't wait to discover this year's local stars." Open to children aged 9 to 15 in school years primary 5 to secondary 3. The auditions will take place on Sunday, the 23rd of August at the Pavilion Theatre. Hopefuls will learn a short routine on the day before performing in groups for the audition panel. No prior experience is necessary. Steve Bowden, the Joint Chief Executive and Managing Director of Imagine Theatre, said, "Every year we're blown away by the talent that we discover at our open auditions. We firmly believe that opportunities like this should be open to young people from all backgrounds, regardless of previous experience or training. What we're really looking for are performers with energy, imagination, confidence and that extra pantomime sparkle. Being part of a junior ensemble is a fun and formative experience in many ways. For those who wish to pursue a career in the arts, we've had a number of our junior ensemble members go on to professionally train and then return to work with us to perform professionally in our pantomimes." Full audition information is available at either the Pavilion Theatre's website at www.paviliontheatre.co.uk or Imagine Theatre's website at www.imaginetheatre.co.uk. Pre-registration is essential, with applications capped at 350 due to high demand in previous years. The pre-registration link will go live on Tuesday, the 30th of June. An article from the Glasgow Times, written by Beth Oliver.
From the Glasgow Times, Monday the 9th of February 2026, from the news section. 3D Drum Chapel rebrands as 3D Families and offers new service. Article written by Beth Oliver. A family support charity has rebranded with a new name and a fresh service. 3D Drum Chapel has updated its name to 3D Families, aiming to reflect its three-dimensional approach to supporting individuals, families and communities. In addition to the rebrand, the organisation has launched a new capacity-building programme called 3D Futures, designed to equip other communities with the tools and training needed to deliver effective family support services. Sharon Colvin, Chief Executive of 3D Families, said, "We are so grateful to everyone who is on this journey with us, our families, our team, our volunteers, our board, our partners, our funders and sponsors. We look forward to continuing to journey together into this new era for 3D Families as we all work together supporting families to live three-dimensional lives." Building on 27 years of work in the Drum Chapel area, the organisation offers frontline family support for children aged 0 to 12 and their families in Drum Chapel, Knightswood and Yoker. Services include perinatal support, parent and child play sessions, peer support groups, school-based assistance and intensive support for families referred by social work professionals. 3D Families also runs the Bayan Necessities project, which redistributes children's clothing and equipment to families in need, and operates the Bayan's Boutique charity shop in the Drum Chapel shopping centre. The charity emphasises the importance of supporting parents and strengthening the parent-child relationship, believing every family deserves the opportunity not just to survive, but to thrive. The new 3D Futures service builds on this philosophy, offering training, coaching, consultancy and practical resources to other organisations across Scotland. Following a successful pilot at East Ayrshire, 3D Families now plans to share its Drum Chapel-based model with communities across Scotland. The charity also leads the Drum Chapel Children and Families Network, bringing together children and families, third sector, social work, health, education, police and housing to work together to improve outcomes with and for children and families in Drum Chapel. At each engagement, participants are encouraged to identify a drop of change, a new action or reflection to take back to their teams or practice. These individual changes, the charity believes, can create ripples that become waves of tangible change, helping children and families receive necessary support at the right time. Organisations and communities interested in 3D Futures can learn more or get in touch by emailing 3dfutures@3dfamilies.org.uk. Further information about all 3D Families services is available via the charity's website. That article was written by Beth Oliver and read to you by Elizabeth. From the Glasgow Times, Monday the 9th of February 2026, from the Lifestyle section. 5 long-lost Glasgow cafes we miss the most. Exclusive by Anne Fotheringham. Glasgow has always been proud of its cafe culture. Here are 5 of the best we miss the most. After the First World War, the Crolla family, famous ice cream makers, opened the Premier Cafe in Bridgeton. It was such a success they had to extend it into the stores on either side of the original shop unit, and by the 1950s, the Crollas had around 30 vans roaming the streets of Glasgow delivering their ice cream. Crolla ice cream continues, but the Premier Cafe is no more. King's Cafe. It was Glasgow's oldest surviving cafe when it closed its doors in 2015, and a regular haunt of stars from the nearby King's Theatre. The late Gerard Kelly was a fan of the King's Cafe, which opened in 1898. Central Cafe. Sauchiehall Street has not had its troubles to seek in recent years, but in the 1950s it was a grand and glamorous shopping destination. The Central Cafe was a highlight, sandwiched between the fancy Corsetiere, billiards hall and J.D. Cuthbertson department store. Queen's Cafe. Lovely traditional cafe on Victoria Road, which was the perfect place to refuel with an ice cream after a walk in nearby Queen's Park. Ross's. Ross's Dairies. It's Ross's, it's right. Had its depot on Crow Road and a variety of outlets throughout the city. These included milk bars, snack bars, and a large cafe at the corner of Howard and Jamaica Streets. Their USP was that their produce was straight from the oven, straight from the farm. And who can forget their delicious soda scones? Get in touch to share your memories by emailing anne.fotheringham@glasgowtimes.co.uk or write to Anne Fotheringham, Glasgow Times, 125 Fullerton Drive, Glasgow, G32 8FG. From the Glasgow Times, Tuesday the 16th of June, 2026, from the news section. Disabled bays in West End labelled bonkers by resident. Article written by Emily Moore. A disgruntled resident in the West End of Glasgow has blasted a row of disabled parking bays as illegal and bonkers after fighting a council fine. Stephen Johnston, 63, received a ticket after parking his vehicle on a space on Downside Road after he was unable to identify that it was actually a disabled space. The sign, he says, was 8 foot high, which made it hard to see in the dark. This sparked Stephen's attention to the bays, which he now argues have insufficient signage and dimensions. None of the spaces have any hatched space to allow for extra accessibility or have any markings on the ground. Stephen said, "There's 5 disabled parking spaces and they're illegal. You can't open your doors, they've not got the width dimension in them. I feel sorry if someone goes there in a wheelchair. If they can't open the door, how do they get out of their cars? The poles and the signs, they don't meet the criteria. They must be sitting about 8 or 10 feet high. Then there's a space next to the pole and you can't open the door. The whole thing is bonkers. I don't know who designed this." According to the Traffic Signs Regulations and General Directions 2016, disabled parking bays are required to be a minimum of 6.6 metres long, 2.7 metres wide, or 3 metres wide where placed in the centre of the carriageway. There can be an exception for cases due to the nature of traffic using the road if the overall width of the carriageway is insufficient to accommodate the dimensions. In addition, the minimum height for a pole with a disabled sign is 90 centimetres. Due to the bonkers signage, Stephen says he parked in one of the bays by mistake and received a fine for his time in the disabled space. Despite owning a blue badge, he claims that he was told he needed to appeal the fine in order to try and get it rescinded. He added, "Folk are getting parking tickets for sitting in these disabled bays, but somebody was clever enough to go look at the legislation. I'd got a permit. I drove in one day and I just thought I didn't see the pole. I just parked. Then I came back in the morning and there was a ticket on it. I phoned them up and said, 'Why have I got a ticket for this?' They said I had to appeal through the system, and I told them these things don't meet the criteria in here. The ticket did get rescinded." A spokesperson for Glasgow City Council said, "We are looking into this matter." That article was written by Emily Moore. From the Glasgow Times, Tuesday the 16th of June, 2026, from the news section. Pollock drug trafficker who made £1.2 million will pay back just £1. Article written by James Mulholland. A drug trafficker who made a £1.2 million fortune from his life of crime will only pay £1 to settle a proceeds of crime action. Henry Macaulay, 28, was snared possessing heroin with a street value of £1 million in December 2024. The High Court in Edinburgh heard how Macaulay was caught after he drove into an industrial estate in Glasgow's Mount Vernon in December 2024. The 28-year-old initially told police he had just 3 kilos of mixer when asked if he had anything that could be harmful to officers. They went on to first find in the Hyundai Tucson a mixture of caffeine and paracetamol, a substance known as bash, used to bulk out drugs to maximise profits. Police then discovered 23 grams of heroin in a van rented by Macaulay parked in the yard, as well as in a unit nearby. Some of the Class A consignments had a purity of up to 50% and had a potential value of £1,152,650. A further 98 kilograms of cannabis, worth more than £170,000, was also seized. Drugs are believed to have originally been trafficked in large tins of olives. On Monday, it emerged that lawyers had agreed to settle the proceeds of crime action brought against Macaulay by the Crown. Prosecutor Brian Heaney told Judge Alison Sterling that the action was now settled. Judge Sterling was told that lawyers agreed that Macaulay had made a total of £1.2 million from his life of crime. However, the court heard that the Crown were unable to recover any of that sum. The court heard that the recoverable sum was nil. And the court also heard that Macaulay had agreed to pay £1 to the authorities in order to end the action. Macaulay, originally of Pollock, Glasgow, was sentenced at the High Court in Glasgow in March this year by Judge Lord Mulholland. He was handed a custodial term of 4 years and 8 months. He had earlier pleaded guilty to a charge of being involved in serious organised crime during a hearing in Edinburgh. Prosecutor Leanne Cross told the court last month, "This case arose as part of a large investigation by Police Scotland into a serious and organised crime group based in Glasgow. The group has international connections and is responsible for the importation, distribution and supply of large quantities of controlled drugs." Police had received information that drugs were at or near a unit at the East End Yard. Ms Cross said, "Within the unit, police officers could see approximately 50 opened large olive tins stacked against a wall to the left, a jet ski on a trailer on the back left, and a black Audi motorcar." She said there was a small office area with a significant quantity of controlled drugs on open display. The prosecutor said the 2 mobile phones that were seized were analysed and found to contain conversations making arrangements to transport, store and distribute heroin and cannabis between September the 6th and December the 6th in 2024. She said, "Throughout those months, Macaulay regularly discussed picking up and dropping off both drugs and cash. There were regular references to jackets or cannabis resin and the nasty stuff, meaning heroin. There was mention of kilos and half kilos, conversations around the preparation of the drugs, and reference to the drugs being concealed within tins." Other locations listed in the charge include addresses in Glasgow, Kilsyth and Cumbernauld, both in Lanarkshire as well as Stirling. Lord Mulholland today told Macaulay, "On your phone you refer to heroin as the nasty stuff. You are right to do so, as it is a highly addictive drug that ruins the lives of users and their families who struggle to deal with addiction. The amount you were caught trafficking would have caused untold damage, all for the pursuit of money." The jail term was cut from 7 years due to the plea. The Crown can return to court should it identify any of Macaulay's criminal assets. That article was written by James Mulholland, court reporter. From the Glasgow Times, Tuesday the 16th of June 2026, from the news section. Prestwick Airport strike called off as 400 workers win pay rise. Article written by Amy Britton. A planned strike by more than 400 airport workers has been called off after union leaders secured a wage win pay deal delivering above inflation rises, extra leave and guaranteed real living wage rates. Unite members at Prestwick Airport had been preparing to strike, but an improved offer led to averting the threat of strike action and acceptance of the deal. The pay agreement includes a wage increase of between 5.1% and 8% for most staff, an additional day of annual leave for this year, improved shift allowances and higher pension contributions. Sharon Graham, General Secretary of Unite, said, "Unite has delivered another wage win in the aviation industry, this time for our members at Prestwick Airport. The deal backed by our members will see significant increases in pay, allowances and better working conditions." The agreement also guarantees the real living wage of £13.45 per hour for all permanent staff. Unite members at the airport include security staff, firefighters, airfield operators, ground crew, ground handling, cargo, customer service staff and cleaners. The airport primarily serves as a cargo hub, but also handles military, domestic and international commercial flights. A strike ballot was due to be concluded this week over a previous failure to make an acceptable pay offer to the airport workers. Siobhan Macready, industrial officer at Unite, said, "The Prestwick Airport deal brings us much closer to achieving proper recognition for shift work, unsocial hours, and the incredible flexibility our members show to keep the business growing." The union said the agreement marks progress, but further improvements are still needed. Unite said it intends to continue pushing for better terms to create the best possible working environment for staff. That article was written by Amy Britton. From the Glasgow Times, Tuesday the 16th of June 2026, from the news section. West of Scotland Transport Body SPT appoints new Chief Executive. Article written by Aidan Maxwell. A new Chief Executive has been appointed to lead one of Scotland's key transport bodies. Jamie Ross will take up the role at Strathclyde Partnership for Transport, SPT, in late September, bringing more than 30 years of public and private sector experience to the post. Ross joins from the Liverpool City Region Combined Authority, where he served as Director of Transport for the past 2 years, overseeing a £1 billion investment programme that included bus franchising and the creation of a fully integrated public transport system. Ross said, "I am absolutely delighted to have been appointed Chief Executive of Strathclyde Partnership for Transport. SPT plays a hugely important role in the economic, social and environmental well-being of the west of Scotland. Every day its services and infrastructure help connect people to employment, education, healthcare, leisure and each other. Having grown up in the west of Scotland and spent much of my career working across the transport sector, I have long admired the role SPT plays in shaping and improving public transport across the region." SPT serves more than 2.2 million people and is central to the region's efforts to develop a more integrated, accessible and sustainable transport network. Ross said, "This is an exciting time for transport, with growing recognition of the role it can play in driving economic growth, tackling inequality, and supporting the transition to a more sustainable future. I am looking forward to working with the partnership, staff, operators, local authorities and stakeholders across the region to build on SPT's strong foundations and continue delivering positive outcomes for communities throughout the west of Scotland." His career spanned senior roles at Menzies Aviation, Serco, Go Ahead Group, Northern Rail and the Scottish Government. Ross replaces Valerie Davidson, who was retiring after 26 years with SPT, including 5 years as Chief Executive. Stephen Dornan, Chair of SPT, said, "I am delighted that Jamie will be joining SPT as our new Chief Executive. We undertook a highly competitive recruitment process which attracted an exceptional field of candidates from across the UK. Jamie was the standout candidate, bringing an outstanding combination of strategic leadership, operational delivery experience and deep transport expertise. I would also like to pay tribute to our current Chief Executive, Valerie Davidson, who will retire later this year after an outstanding period of leadership. Valerie has made an enormous contribution to SPT, helping to strengthen the organisation, champion public transport and position it at the centre of regional transport planning and delivery. On behalf of the partnership, I would like to thank Valerie for her commitment, dedication and service." That article was written by Aidan Maxwell. From the Glasgow Times, Monday the 9th of February 2026, from the news section. Susan Aitken on 2026 being a momentous year for Glasgow. Article written by Stuart Patterson. The Glasgow Times spoke to Susan Aitken, leader of Glasgow City Council, about what people can expect to see in 2026. The leader outlined her thoughts on the year ahead before answering our questions on what this means for the people of Glasgow. Susan Aitken said, "This is a momentous year for Glasgow. Hosting the Commonwealth Games for a second time, the completion of an iconic new George Square, and an election which will have a major bearing on the city's future, 2026 will be a milestone for 21st century Glasgow. We've been through some tough times recently. COVID, the cost of living crisis, and spiralling energy costs have all been difficult for households and businesses alike. But while I'll never downplay the challenges Glasgow continues to face, we're turning a corner. Positive change is happening. There's increasing confidence in a city centre outperforming its comparators and welcoming both new international retailers and developers eager to invest. In the months ahead, Glaswegians will see much more of how the 120 million Avenues programme is improving key streets, and in the 2026 Games will once again welcome the world to Glasgow, showcase our city and give our citizens a summer to remember. These remain turbulent times, and Glasgow's challenges can often be beyond our control. But the pride and partnerships which make this city great have stood us in good stead. 2026 will be a year of good things happening, and that's something we can all get behind." When the hoardings come down and the new George Square is revealed, the question has been posed, will the city really see a meaningful difference that justifies the spend and inconvenience? On that, Susan Aitken is confident it will deliver what the people want. Aitken said, "Yes, people will see a difference. We did a lot of consultation about George Square and about what people wanted to see, and people wanted to see a George Square that they recognised. They wanted the square updated, refurbished, and they wanted more grass, more places to sit, more trees. All of that will happen. It will be a bigger George Square. There will be more space, and it will flow into the streets around as well. But it will still be recognisably George Square, a world-class centrepiece for our city, which we've been waiting for and needed a long time." She said George Square needed some work and would have had disruption regardless, leading her to believe the decision to do it properly with long-lasting benefits was the right one. She added, "I'm very much hoping that people will be happy with it." Aitken said, "We are on schedule to reopen in September with a launch. We'll have a nice event." The date and details are still to be confirmed, but the plan is the occasion will be marked. Avenues. George Square is just one part of the overall work going on in the city centre. All around, roads and pavements are being redesigned, some with cycle lanes, new greenery and seating, and lighting upgraded. It is causing frustration for many stuck in cars or buses as the roads take longer to navigate, and some are wondering, why devote scarce resources to this? The council leader said she understands that frustration, but ultimately it is worth it, and it will bring benefits to everyone with an interest in the city centre. Aitken said, "By this summer, the whole Avenues programme will be halfway completed." The leader pinpoints one street as an example. Argyle Street, between the Highlandman's Umbrella and the Kingston Bridge, known in Avenues speak as Argyle Street West, is nearing completion. Aitken said, "It is a much more attractive street. There's more space for pedestrians, there's obviously space for cyclists, but there's also greenery there. It is no longer just lanes of traffic. It feels like a genuinely shared space, and everyone who comes into the city centre will benefit from that. And that includes people who either drive through or drive into the city centre." When asked the question many people have asked, how does this inconvenience and disruption benefit the average person in Glasgow, Aitken is looking at a bigger picture. She expands. What it demonstrates is a city of ambition, a city that is making that investment in itself to improve, to renew, and what that brings is investment and also jobs. The conversations are not new to the council leader, and her answer is think longer term. She explains, I often say to people, yes, this is inconvenient. I know it causes inconvenience and disruption for people. I understand that entirely. Of course, we apologise to people for the inconvenience and disruption while it's happening. What I don't apologise for is the ambition and the huge amount of investment that is taking place in our city centre. She quips, we don't have civil engineering fairies to do that overnight while we all sleep. And others, she said, are taking notice. Aitken said, when investors come and they see stuff happening, they see cranes, they see work going on in key parts of a city, what they see is ambition. They see a city not sitting on its laurels, not being complacent, but making that investment. And we get feedback. JP Morgan, for example, on that west section of Argyle Street, they're saying already they feel and see the difference right outside their doorstep. And they're not the only ones saying that. Aitken also wants to remind people the work is creating jobs, work for the construction industry, putting money from the city deal into communities across Glasgow. Commonwealth Games. During our interview, the council leader is sporting a Commonwealth Games 2026 lapel badge. Much has been made of the scaled-back nature of these games, and Glasgow 2026 not being Glasgow 2014, and so far the level of excitement is nowhere near that of 12 years ago. Aitken, however, said there are signs people are still up for it again, and there will be more happening than the events themselves. She said, there will be a Games Festival in the same way that there was in 2014 for folk across the city to take part in. It's something that we insisted on when, as a city, we agreed to rescue the Commonwealth Games, which is what Glasgow's done. She said the fund to host events was oversubscribed. As it gets closer, she feels excitement will build. She said, we want to make sure people have opportunities to participate, and we will let people know about it as soon as we've got that in place. There are still a few months to go. I think when we start to see some of those names who will actually be participating, that will start to build the excitement, particularly for Team Scotland. Come April-May, people will start to feel the excitement building, and especially when we're able to reveal what's going to be happening during the festival. Scottish election. Among all the work in the city, the Commonwealth Games, and the day-to-day running of Scotland's biggest local authority, there is the matter of a Scottish Parliament election. Throughout her tenure as council leader, there has been an SNP government at Holyrood and 3 SNP First Ministers. Asked about the prospect of potentially having to deal with a change of government, she says the approach will be consistent. Aitken said, I would deal with them in exactly the same way as I've dealt with Labour and Tory Prime Ministers and Secretaries of State, which is I will work with them for Glasgow. I will always be making Glasgow's case. I'll be pushing them, which is exactly the same as I do with the SNP First Minister, just to make that absolutely clear. Regardless of which of the mainstream political parties are in government, I will work with them. That article was written by Stuart Patterson and read to you by Elizabeth.
From the Glasgow Times, Wednesday the 17th of June 2026, from the Lifestyle section. Kitty O'Shea's on Glasgow's Waterloo Street wins licence battle, by Amy Miles. A popular Irish pub in Glasgow city centre has been granted changes to its alcohol licence after an objector claimed music from the venue is deafening and some next-door offices can't be used. Kitty O'Shea's, which won an award for the best Irish bar in Scotland last year, faced 2 objections as it applied for a variation to its premises licences. There were concerns about the impact of noise on office workers in a neighbouring Waterloo Street property. Objector Frank McCormick told the city's licensing board, when the music is playing it is deafening in 19 Waterloo Street as some of the offices can't be used. The licensing board heard the music starts at 7 p.m. from Monday to Thursday and 4 p.m. on Friday, Saturday and Sunday in the multi-floor venue. A representative acting on behalf of applicant CLGM LIC said the bar's manager can identify zones of the venue where the music needs to be kept lower. He told the licensing board that music levels could be adjusted zone by zone. Addressing the board, he said Kitty O'Shea's is an authentic Irish bar, showing Gaelic sports and celebrating events in the calendar, including St Patrick's Day. The representative said the variation of the premises licences being requested is modest and includes a change to 11 a.m. opening on Sundays. The meeting heard there had been no formal complaints dealt with by Glasgow's Licensing Standards Officer in relation to the bar. Police confirmed that it had attended 6 incidents, but they were not related to music. The board granted the variation of the premises licence. That article was written by Amy Miles and recorded by Eve McKenna. From the Glasgow Times, Wednesday the 17th of June 2026, from the news section. Man in Glasgow Sheriff Court after firearms incident in Springburn, by Amy Miles. A man is set to appear in court today after a pensioner was injured in an alleged firearm incident in Glasgow. A 28-year-old man has been charged after a 78-year-old man was hurt in the Springburn area last month. The injured man was taken to hospital for treatment and later discharged. Armed and uniformed officers locked down the residential street at the time. The 28-year-old is due to appear at Glasgow Sheriff Court today, Wednesday, June 17, 2026. A Police Scotland spokesperson said, a 28-year-old man who was arrested after a man was injured by a firearm in the Springburn area of Glasgow has now been charged. The incident took place outside an address on Crichton Street around 12:40 p.m. on Thursday, May 28, 2026. A 78-year-old man was taken to hospital for treatment and later discharged. The 28-year-old is due to appear at Glasgow Sheriff Court on Wednesday, June 16th, 2026. That article was written by Amy Miles and read by Ian. From the Glasgow Times, Wednesday the 17th of June 2026, from the news section. Patient dies after ambulance crash on Glasgow's Balmoral Road, by Amy Miles. A patient who was inside an ambulance when it crashed in North Glasgow has died. Police and ambulance crews were called to Balmoral Road at around 9 p.m. on Tuesday, June 16th, after a collision between a car and an ambulance. The Scottish Ambulance Service said the vehicle had been en route to the hospital with a patient on board when it was involved in the crash. The patient was transferred to another ambulance at the scene and taken to Glasgow Royal Infirmary. Police Scotland has now confirmed the man who had been in the ambulance died in hospital following what they described as a medical matter. 2 ambulance staff members were taken to the Queen Elizabeth University Hospital for treatment, while a student paramedic was taken to Glasgow Royal Infirmary. The 49-year-old driver of the car has been arrested in connection with a road traffic offence, and inquiries are ongoing. A Police Scotland spokesperson said, around 9 p.m. on Tuesday, 16th of June 2026, we were called to a report of a crash involving a car and an ambulance on Balmoral Road, Glasgow. Emergency services attended and there were no injuries reported. A male patient who was within the ambulance later died in hospital following a medical matter. The driver of the car, a 49-year-old man, was arrested in connection with a road traffic offence and inquiries are ongoing. A Scottish Ambulance Service spokesperson said, one of our ambulances, which was en route to hospital, was involved in a road traffic collision on Balmoral Road, Glasgow, at 8:58 p.m. on Tuesday evening. The patient on board was transported to Glasgow Royal Infirmary by another ambulance. 2 staff members were taken to the Queen Elizabeth University Hospital, and a student paramedic was transported to Glasgow Royal Infirmary. A Scottish Fire and Rescue Service spokesperson said, we were alerted at 9 p.m. on Tuesday 16th of June to reports of a road traffic collision involving 1 car and an emergency service vehicle on Balmoral Road, Glasgow. Operations Control mobilised 3 fire appliances and a heavy rescue unit to the scene to assist emergency service partners. Firefighters left at 9:55 p.m. after ensuring the site was safe. That article was written by Amy Miles and read by Ian McKenna. From the Glasgow Times, Wednesday the 17th of June, news. Plans to expand £2 bus fare cap across Scotland underway by Morgan Carmichael. Plans to expand a £2 bus fare cap across Scotland have been set out by the Scottish Government. Opening a debate on affordable bus fares, Stephen Flynn, the Cabinet Secretary for Economy, Tourism and Transport, confirmed that the work is now underway to extend the cap beyond the Highlands and Islands pilot, with early expansion planned for the Strathclyde region. The move aims to ensure that more people benefit from the more affordable public transport, especially in the current cost of living crisis. Stephen Flynn said, "The cost of living continues to put pressures on families across Scotland, and making public transport more affordable is one of the ways this government is determined to support people. That's why we've scrapped rail fares and why we've committed record funding for bus services and concessionary travel in excess of £530 million for 2026-27. In addition to free bus travel for under 22s, which has been a massive success with over 300 million journeys now made through the scheme, our £2 bus fare cap is already helping people save money on everyday journeys while making it easier to choose a bus. We are now moving at pace to extend that support to more communities and ultimately deliver a nationwide £2 fare cap, helping households, supporting our economy and encouraging more sustainable travel." That article was written by Morgan Carmichael. From the Glasgow Times, Wednesday the 17th of June, news. South Lanarkshire residents warned over bogus parking fine text scam by Aidan Maxwell. South Lanarkshire residents are being warned about a bogus parking fine text that appears to use real personal details. The council said it had been alerted after a local woman received a message demanding £25 for a supposed parking charge, which included her correct name but an old car registration. Officials stressed that the local authority would never issue or chase up a parking charge by text message and urged anyone who receives a similar notification to delete it immediately and not to click on any links or share personal or banking details. In a post shared on social media, the council's Seniors Together group said, "Scam parking charge notice." The screenshot above shows a text received by an SL resident looking for a charge of £25 to be paid for parking. The text states the recipient's real name, but her old car registration has been used. South Lanarkshire Council will never make you aware of a parking charge via text message. If you get one of these, delete it. Seniors Together, stay safe. Written by Aidan Maxwell, read by Ian McKenna. From the Glasgow Times, Wednesday the 17th of June 2026, from the entertainment section. X-Files star David Duchovny to perform at Glasgow Art School by Emily Moore. X-Files star David Duchovny will take to the stage in Glasgow for the first night of his recently announced European tour. The actor and musician is set to perform at the art school on October the 7th, 2026, as he embarks on his Prince of Pieces trip across the continent. His album, with the same name as the tour, is set to release this summer, with the title track already out. The Glasgow date will mark his first show of the tour, which will span over 2 weeks. Pre-sale tickets were released on June 17th at 10 AM, with general sale kicking off at the same time on June 19th. Duchovny, now 63, rose to worldwide fame as one half of Mulder and Scully in the 1990s TV show, which saw he and actress Gillian Anderson play FBI agents investigating paranormal activity. That article was written by Emily Moore. From the Glasgow Times, Wednesday the 17th of June 2026, from the news section. Dozens of taxis seen travelling through Glasgow for annual Troon outing by Nicole Mitchell. Dozens of taxis travelled through Glasgow today as the Glasgow taxi outing made its way to Troon. The parade, which is taking place for the 79th year, sees taxi drivers volunteer to take children with additional support needs to the seaside town for a day out. Around 130 taxis set off from Kelvin Way at around 10:45am this morning, June 17, before making their way along Sauchiehall Street, Fitzroy Place, Charing Cross, Newton Street, M8, M77, A77 and on towards Troon. Glasgow Times taxi stickers and branded maracas were handed out to the children, while Gary McGrattan drove his cab, which had been decorated to celebrate Glasgow Times' 150th anniversary. Taxis were decorated with different themes, with most adding balloons and flags, and many taxi drivers wore fancy dress. Several people were lined up on Sauchiehall Street waiting to see the taxis make their way through the city centre and wave to children. Since 1945, thousands of taxi drivers have donated their time and effort to make the annual outing a success, with the tradition well received by the people of Glasgow. Celtic FC Foundation donated £7,000 to the Glasgow Taxi Outing Fund, continuing their long-standing support of the event. Tosh McKinley presented a cheque on behalf of the foundation, which has supported the fund for more than 20 years. Speaking at today's event, McKinley said, "The taxi outing is one of the most heartwarming events you'll ever have the privilege of experiencing. The sheer fun and joy on the kids' faces, and the generosity of all the many taxi drivers and volunteers all combine to make this such a special occasion. I am delighted that Celtic FC Foundation plays such a part in something so special." Ever since their formation, the club has always stood for community and for helping others, and this event is a perfect example of that in action. Tony Hamilton, Chief Executive of Celtic FC Foundation, added, "We are really pleased again to play our part in supporting the annual trip to Troon. This special day continues to bring real joy and respite to children and families who truly deserve it. The day always, in all its colour and excitement, is a real tribute to the hard work, compassion and commitment of all those involved, from drivers, organisers to volunteers combined, and they all deserve enormous credit. So many people give their time and the energy, and their dedication is central to the success of the event. Our ongoing contribution is something we value deeply. Celtic was established to serve those in need, and important initiatives such as the taxi trip is a living reflection of that founding purpose." Speaking ahead of the event, Jim Buchanan, chair of the Glasgow Taxi Outing Fund, previously said, "We get the kids fed in the morning, whereby they'll have had their breakfast, they'll have their packed lunch, and they'll have a big bag of sweets that they can take home with them or do whatever they like. All that's brought to each individual school on the morning of the outing. They're then transported by taxi with their lunches and everything else that they've got over to Kelvin Way, where we congregate to meet for that hour or so. We then leave and we're escorted through Glasgow. This year, because of the Union Street fire and George Square being closed, there is nothing in the town. It's a shame." He added, "It's a magical experience. The first time I ever done it was 33 years ago and I had tears in my eyes. You know, actually, thinking about it now, I've still got them." That report was written by Nicole Mitchell and read by Ian McKenna.
That concludes this week's edition of the Glasgow Times podcast. Please remember to subscribe to our channels at Review and Review, and to tell your friends about our service.